Welcome to Casually Dressed Deep Conversation with me, Greg Chalmers. Our guest today is world record holder Josh Quigley. How are you, my friend?
I'm very well, thanks for having me.
Not a problem at all, mate. Not a problem. Have you been out on your bike today?
I'm not actually, not yet. I had a really big weekend, so probably just going to do an hour later on.
Good, man. Good. This is a good day for it. Are you over
I,
on the East? Are you over on the East Coast?
I am in Livingston, yes.
Livingston. Okay. Okay. Cool. So for anyone who doesn't know, give us a wee bit of a backstory as how you get into cycling.
So my name's Josh Quigley. I'm a professional athlete and cyclist. Basically got into cycling a few years ago because I was depressed, suicidal, abusing my body with drugs and alcohol, and was looking for something different. Knew that I couldn't keep living my life that way. A failed suicide attempt was a bit of a wake up call for me. And I just knew I had to do something different. I was inspired to get into cycling by Sir Chris Hoy. I'd heard him giving a talk at an event I was at in Edinburgh. I wasn't there to hear him. I was there just, I had my own business at the time. I was doing a bit of networking. So I didn't really have any interest in cycling at the time. Went along, heard the talk, felt inspired, and just sitting in the audience that day, I said, fuck it, I'm going to cycle around the world. That was it.
I mean, it's quite. I mean, it's quite. That's quite something to say. Do you know what I mean? Like, not just I'm going to cycle around Scotland or something like that. Cycle around the world. So the the mindset to get to actually attempt something like that from being where you were. How did you get yourself there?
I had the greatest possible fuel source, which was pain. I was in so much pain, it was unbelievable. I was so depressed, so suicidal, been through a massive breakup a year earlier with a girlfriend of 7 years, a big part of my life that was over. Found that really difficult to come to terms with. I also felt like I was suffocating in the environment I was in. I grew up in Livingston, just outside Edinburgh in Scotland. Massive drinking culture, big part of my life growing up. Me and my mates, I was a wee boy, started drinking at 12 on the streets, drinking cider and all that, and then started going to pubs at 16, started doing drugs. And from like 16 to 22, that was my life, Thursday to Sunday, going to the pub, as much drinking drugs as I could get my hands on. So I knew that when I hit that depressive period when my girlfriend and I broke up, I knew I couldn't keep drinking. I knew I couldn't keep doing drugs because I knew that wasn't working. I was going to end up dead. And I thought, I need to stop drinking. I need to be sober. I need to pursue a different path. But doing that while still living in Livingston with all the mates I grew up with and the environment I was in, I just found it very, very difficult. It's hard to no drink when you and your mates for the last 5, 6 years have been going to the pub every week
Yeah.
religiously. When it's Thursday night, Friday night, your phone's gone. Josh, come to the pub, and that's no blaming them. That's just that was the lifestyle that I was involved in. That's what I signed up for, and that's who I was back then. But once I got to a point where I realised I can't do this anymore, I had to just go and do my own thing for a period of time. And it was really difficult taking myself away from mates that I grew up with and mates that were guys that I love to this day and all my best mates I grew up with. But I just had to do it for myself because I knew I was going to end up dead. So for me, cycling around the world, it was like the perfect goal. It was a perfect solution. It was a perfect escape because it gave me a chance to get away from Scotland, get away from the culture I grew up in. It gave me a big goal, a big challenge to focus on, and it gave me a chance to just get a bit of breathing space and get a bit of time to myself. So, in terms of my motivation and my mindset for taking on that challenge, I needed to do it
Yeah.
because the alternative was living in Scotland, being in that environment, drinking drugs every weekend, and probably going to end up successfully attempting suicide at some point because literally every time I went out, I would at the end of the night I would walk home, I would walk into the woods at night, adamant that I was going to do it, and then someone would stop me, and so I would just go home. So there was always going to come a time where that time would something would just push me over the edge, and so I needed to do it. So it was either stay in Scotland and have that life, or go and try and cycle around the world. So
Yeah.
I had so much pain that was like the driving force for that.
Do you know what's funny? We had a boy. I don't know if you know a guy called Aidan Martin. He's from Livingston. He's an author. He wrote a book called Euphoric Recall, and see what you're describing, your sort of formative early adult years. He was the exact same, and he was in the exact same position as you. That he literally got to the point where he was adamant he was going to commit suicide, and then something stopped him, and then he dropped it all, went into recovery, and then he sort of went down. His sort of focus shifted to sort of drug reform, and he wrote a book about it and all that sort of stuff. But I just think it's really interesting because I think there is a culture in Scotland, especially for young men, that go on, have a drink and all that sort of stuff. And you and Aidan are the lucky ones that managed to pull themselves out it. You know, it's I do think it is a culture thing. You know.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So have any of your friends that you associated with back then, have they taken you on as their inspiration to sort of get out the game?
Nah, no, yeah. I think, do you know what? This is like a serious point as well. Is I've got so many people in my life around me, people that I love dearly, friends, family, whatever, who drink all the time and like to drink at the weekend. And do you know what? I've not got a problem with that. I just recognised that this isn't working for me anymore. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to preach and tell the world, you need to stop drinking, you need to stop doing this, you need to start living your life this way. I just have self-awareness that, you know what? I'm quite an addictive, obsessive, all or nothing guy. So if I'm going to be living that life, I'm going to be out Thursday to Sunday every weekend. That's just who I am. Mm-hmm. I'm never going to go up to the pub on a Friday, have two down the road. It's just not who I am. So when I wanted to stop doing that, I just thought I'm just better off being teetotal completely. And I'm now almost 3 years sober, and it works for me. And now with being an athlete and with my cycling, just no drinking just makes sense. So I've still got loads of people in my life that do that, and I've no intention of telling them not to, but I just know it works for me.
Yeah. So how did you go about training for cycling around the world? Because I would imagine that you don't really know what's going to be coming up. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So what was the training program like?
I never.
You didn't train?
Oh, that's the funniest thing about it.
You just got on a bike.
I never really trained for it. Like I started, you know, it was about 6 months for having the idea to get on the bike and going to try it for the first time, right? In that time, I did start making a lot of changes. Like I stopped drinking, you know, started eating better, started going out for runs, started going to the gym and all that. I was starting the process of getting fitter, but for some reason, I never really done that much cycling leading up to it. I think at the time in my head, I'm thinking, right, when I go away, I'm going to be cycling all the time, so I'm going to get fit eventually from that. So I didn't really train that much for it, but I just got on the bike and just went for it and just gave it my all, really.
So how many times have you attempted it?
7.
And what's the furthest you've managed to get?
Well, the 7th attempt, I've basically done it. That 7th final time. You know, I cycled almost 15,000 miles right across Europe, right across Asia, right across Australia, halfway across America. And then when I was just a few weeks from finishing, finally cycling around the world in the 7th attempt, I got hit by a car in America at 70 miles an hour in Texas. So I've not been able to finish it because that was just just before COVID as well. So I've not been able to get back to finish it.
15,000 miles, man. I can't even imagine how like, you're on your own for that amount of time. You're like in your own head. What's going through your mind? Is it just very single-minded, focused on where the next stop is, or I don't know, are you having deep meaningfuls, or what's happening?
I think it was very different from when I was in the beginning and towards the end, because in the beginning, like my first attempt, I went away, cycled around Europe for about a year, done 10,000 miles, 14 countries, and in that year, that was really just like it was never about the bike in that first year. I was just a young guy on a journey, trying to find himself, classic shit. You know, away traveling for the first time. You know, I'm meeting all these people, staying in hostels, couch surfing, seeing so much of Europe, reading all the books. You know, meditating, just doing all the things that you'd imagine you could do traveling around Europe. So that time for me, it was really more about just learning to be on my own after the big breakup, just finding out a lot more about myself in a different environment for the culture I grew up in. So that was really what it was about back then. I was just kind of learning about myself. But then as I got deeper into the journey, when I had the 7th and sort of final attempt in 2019, that was a totally different journey. That was where I really fell in love with cycling in a way that I hadn't in any of the previous attempts. The best way to describe it is that in the beginning, the bike was really just a vehicle for like a sort of inner emotional journey that I was on, just trying to be happy again, just trying to overcome depression. But on that seventh final time, I fell in love with the bike and developed a real passion and talent for the sport of cycling, which was really interesting. That was really where I became an athlete, I guess, and where I developed, the ambitions and the interest in wanting to become a professional and wanting to compete and wanting to set records and wanting to win races and all that sort of stuff.
I would imagine cycling across Asia. I mean, it's such a vast continent, and there's obviously a lot of areas that people would advise you to stay away from. So, did you have to take that into consideration when you were meandering through, or?
Not really. I mean, there's certain places you don't cycle through, like Syria or Iraq, maybe. Or there's a few places that you want to, like, war zones, for example. But what I thought was interesting is that a lot of the places that people told me not to go to ended up being some of the friendliest places. Like, for example, Albania. A lot of people said to me, "No, don't go to Albania, Josh. Albanians are dodgy. You'll get attacked, you'll get mugged, etc." But I found that when I was in Albania, cycling through there wasn't really any tourists there because nobody really wants to go to Albania because of this kind of reputation. Mm-hmm. And the actual people that I met in Albania were actually really nice, really friendly, really hospitable. And I think it's because they kind of appreciated somebody actually gone there, because not that many people do. So that happened a couple of times. There was countries like Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan. A lot of those places that people traditionally don't really go to were actually the places where people were nicest, because I think they appreciated the fact that somebody was gone there and they don't see that many tourists.
Did you ever come into any trouble? Was there any?
Nah, I can honestly say I've never, except for getting hit by a car at 70 miles.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
I can honestly say in over 30 countries, 4 continents, I've never really felt unsafe or in danger. I've had the complete opposite experience, being hosted by families over 200 times, stayed in people's houses, been invited to weddings, stopped at restaurants at the end of the night. People have gave me food. People have stopped me at the side of the road, gave me food and water, bread, bananas, just sort of, I've got a million stories like that of people that have just went out their way to help me. So now all my experiences with people on the road and traveling have been positive, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that in itself, I think reaffirms your faith in humankind, doesn't it? Because, like you said, people do say things, you need to watch when you're going there, and yeah. So tell me about the crash in Texas. I mean, getting hit by a car at any time is never going to be a good time, but 70 mile an hour.
No.
So, do you remember it?
The good thing about getting hit by a car at 70 mile an hour is you don't really feel it. Like you're just riding your bike, and then you wake up in the back of a helicopter, and you're like, right, what the fuck's going on here?
Wow.
That was pretty much my experience. The last thing I can remember is, it's really interesting that night actually, because going across America was almost like the final leg. Once I'd done Los Angeles to New York, that was me basically finished. I just had a wee bit of Europe to go back up to Edinburgh from Portugal. So when I was in America, I was in really good spirits. I'd spent basically 5 years of my life with this goal of trying to cycle around the world. Had never finished it. So I was just a few weeks away from finishing the big goal, or the big Everest that I'd had in my life. So I was in good spirits. I was doing about a couple hundred miles a day at this point. And I remember that night, 21st of December, 2019, I'd done about 180 miles, and I stopped at this wee Burger King in a place called Gatesville. It was quite late at this point. It was quite dark, about 10 o'clock at night. And I thought, you know what? I've already done 180 miles. It's really dark. Probably should just stop here. And I thought, you know what? An hour 20 miles to Temple. That'll get your 200 mile target, and just get the target done. So I got back on the bike at the Burger King, went onto the highway, and then I got hit on that highway. So it's just weird how these things can just happen. Like if I just decided to stay in Gatesville that night, it would have never happened. But I don't like to think that way. I genuinely, I've been on quite a spiritual journey, if you want to call it that, over the last 5 years. I genuinely believe that all these things have been happening for a reason, and that there's some sort of guide or God or whatever looking after me. I really believe that. I know a lot of people don't believe in that stuff, but there's been too many things in my life happened now over the last 5 years that I do believe in it. Mm-hmm. So I always believe that was meant to happen that night, and it was just a part of my journey.
So how long were you in hospital for?
So I was in hospital for about 2.5 weeks in Texas, and then I got released to a rehab facility in Austin. So I was there for about another couple of weeks. So I was in hospital in America, hospital and rehab for about 5 weeks before I was released.
Wow. And what were your injuries?
So I basically got hit by a car from behind at 70 mile an hour. Once that happened, I'd flew about 50 feet through the air. I'd actually like to see video footage of that. It'd probably be hilarious, like you just flying through the air like Superman. So I flew through the air for about 50 feet, hit the ground, and the injuries that I had was a fractured skull, traumatic brain injury, 7 broken ribs, fractures on my spine, pelvis, broken ankle, broken heel bone, broken shin. I needed about 3 major surgeries as well. So I was very lucky to survive. There's not many people get hit by a car at 70 mile an hour on a bike and are here to tell the tale. Never mind, like even to be conscious and to be mentally sound. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of people with their brain damage at least or something like that. So I don't really know how I survived that, but I did. And I was very determined when I woke up in hospital that I was going to get back in the bike and finish cycling around the world.
Mm-hmm. That's because most people would have just been like, "Nah, I think I think I'll give it a miss." So, see, after you were in hospital for that length of time, how long was it until you were back out on the bike?
So, about 3 weeks after the accident, when I was in the rehab centre in Austin, they had a gym and all that. So I was wheeling myself down to the gym in my wheelchair. Leg was still in a cast, and sitting in the wheelchair, I was able to cycle an indoor bike. So I was doing like 3 or 4 hours a day in the rehab facility there. All the people that worked there thought I was absolutely mental. Like I've definitely set records for the most that anybody's cycled that bike before.
In a cast.
So I was that just tells you a wee bit about the mindset and the determination about how much I wanted to get back in the bike. Mm-hmm. And so I got released to Scotland after about 5 weeks. I spent a couple of weeks indoors training on a turbo trainer in my conservatory. Then after about 9 weeks, I was back on the road. And then 12 weeks after the accident, I was fit, rehabilitated, ready to go back to America and ready to go back to Texas and finish cycling around the world. But this was now like just at the end of March 2020, and then the whole COVID thing happened. So I've basically been stuck here for a year and just been forced to find other goals and challenges within the UK.
Yeah. Well, talking about goals and challenges in the UK, you're the world record holder for cycling the North Coast 500. Am I right? Was it 31 hours?
31 hours and 19 minutes.
Right. That is ridiculous. How did I like that? Because I was I'm actually doing the North Coast 500 in a couple of weeks. We're doing it in a motorhome and we're doing it over 7 days, right?
I think that sounds a wee bit more enjoyable.
So talk us through like how you never slept? Were you just eating on the bike?
No, so basically I'd got back from America around about February in 2020. Started training on the bike March, and then things were just going well, continuing the rehabilitation. I was just hoping to get back to America at some point. I think like a lot of people, we never really knew how serious COVID was. So I just thought that at some point maybe I'll get back to America in April, May, June, something like that. But I think by the time June or July came, I think we all kind of realised, right, COVID's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get back to America anytime soon either. So I knew I had to find some sort of new goal. You know, I got into the shape of my life. You know, I was the fittest I'd ever been. All the injuries were totally healed. Honestly, I was absolutely flying in June last year. And I thought, right, I need a new goal. And somebody suggested to me, why don't you go for the North Coast 500 record? At the time, it was held by James McCallum, who's an ex-professional cyclist. He'd done it in 31 hours and 23 minutes. It had originally been set by Mark Beaumont, who's got the world record for cycling around the world.
I've met him.
Aye.
Yeah.
Mark's a great guy. He's helped me out a lot at other parts of my journey. So they're, you know, two Scotland's greatest ever cyclists, very respected guys. And so that was the times that had been set. So we knew going up to Inverness that we basically just had to go faster than 31 hours and 23 minutes. Our strategy as a team, because obviously I had a full support team, it's not the sort of thing you can do on your own.
Yeah.
Our strategy was essentially just to stop for nothing. Like, one of the things that we noticed is that the last couple of guys that done it, Mark and James, they both had around about 2.5 hours of downtime where, so like if his time was, if he rode it in say 29 hours, it was actually like 31 and a half because they had 2.5 hours of like stopping for breaks or rest or whatever. And I knew that I had the ability to just go and go and go and no stop. So our strategy was to not take any breaks and to not stop for anything. That meant eating on the bike, doing a toilet on the bike, literally stopping for nothing. And throughout the entire 516 miles around the North Coast 500, my time my time was 31 hours and 19 minutes total time, but my actual riding time was 31 hours and 11 minutes. So over 31 and a half hours, there was only 8 minutes where I wasn't riding the bike. And that wasn't me stopping for breaks or anything. That was just like traffic lights, like stopping to put a jacket on. Like if there was a way going round that with no traffic lights or no forced stops, I would have done it without stopping. So that was really how we set the record. We never stopped really, and that's where we made up a lot of time.
Was the weather okay and stuff like that, or were you?
We were really lucky. You know, in the week leading up to my attempt on the 19th of September, there was two other guys, two really strong racing cyclists who made attempts at the record. Both of them never managed to finish it, and we were really lucky. The weather was just absolutely perfect. When I arrived in Inverness a few days before it, the sun was shining, the sky was blue, and I just knew. I thought, this is my time. Like, I'm ready. I'm going to set this world record here. It just felt like everything, and just the stars of the line, whatever you want to call it. And I just knew I was going to do it. So, it was incredibly special.
So, see if somebody beat your record, would you get back on the bike again and have another go at it?
I'm already planning on doing it again this year because I know I can do it faster. So I done it in 31 hours and 19 minutes, but my goal was to do it in under 30. I know I can do it under 30 hours, so I'll be doing it. I'd imagine I'd probably be doing it again. Depends on how the year plays out.
Yeah,
I plan on doing it again.
Wow, see that's incredible. I mean, just when I read it, I was like 31 hours and think that's like, and I did try. I was thinking to myself, he must just have never stopped. But I thought cycling for that length of time takes its toll on your body that much. So once you'd done it and you've I've got the world record. How long did it take you to recover for that level of exertion?
About 3 weeks.
Really?
No, I'm being serious. It was about three weeks of recovery after it. I wasn't on the bike for 3 weeks. For the first couple of those weeks, I was just fucked. Like, it just took so much out of me. The third week, I was down in London doing some business, so I could have probably been on the bike in the third week. So it probably around about 2 weeks. About 2 to 3 weeks recovery time.
How many calories did you burn? Do you know?
I think it was about 20,000.
What? That's incredible, man. No wonder you were fucked. Because I mean, you couldn't eat 20,000 calories whilst on a bike, could you?
No, but you're see, that's the hardest bit about doing something like that, the nutrition. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of people who, you know, like eating, like their food. If you said to them, right, you need to eat 20,000 calories, they'd be like, fuck, that's brilliant, man. see, honestly, when you try and do it, honestly, after the first 5 or 6 hours, like, you're just starting to get sick of food. And by the time you're like 12, 16, 24 hours into it, you just can't stomach anything. You've went through every possible food there is. You know, you went through all the sandwiches, the wraps, the bagels. You went through all the cycling products, the gels. You went through chocolate, Haribos, tablets, sweeties, fizzy sweets. Like, you just got literally any possible food you could think about eating. I ate it on that thing. Because your gut can only handle so much of one thing. And by the final few hours, honestly, I just couldn't stomach anything. It was just horrible.
And were people just handing you water when you were? Is that how it worked?
I had a full support team with me, like a couple of vehicles. I had a nutritionist and stuff with me. So we had a strategy. Basically, we're just trying to take on 90 grams of carbohydrates every hour. So every hour they would just pass me things for the car. You know, energy gels, energy bars, sandwiches, just, you know, you name it, just whatever I was feeling like at that time.
It's mental, man. It's mental. So, see, how do you adjust to life? So when you come back from, not even just the North Coast 500, but when you come back from your attempts to go around the world, and you come back to everyday life, how do you adjust?
It's quite hard, actually. Like, really. Used to find that really hard in the earlier days when I first started doing it, because, you know, when you're cycling around the world, you can imagine how much an adventure that is, and you imagine how much like a week here is like a day on the road. You know, the amount of things that happen just every day is such an adventure, good, bad, exciting. There's just so much stuff happening. So to go from cycling around the world and then to come home and try to do some of the more normal, mundane stuff is a challenge. You know, it really is.
So what would So obviously you're a full-time athlete, so you just basically just like recovering and then getting ready for the next adventure, and was that kind of what you were
It
doing?
just, no, it really depends because a lot of the times in the earlier days it was like I'd go away and I'd try it and then I think, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done. I would quit and I'd come home. And when I came home, I was thinking, right, I'm going to try and do something else, and I would go and try other things, and then I would eventually be like, do you know what, I need to get back in the bike. So it was always, I used to have this love-hate relationship with cycling where I'd do it, go away and try cycling around the world, then I'd be like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. So I was very hot and cold with it for a couple of years there.
Do you think that a big part of the motivation and the big part of your drive and want to do it comes from the fact that you've got quite an addictive personality?
100%. Like I've got. If you look at the greatest champions in the history of sport, not just in cycling over the last 50 years, it's always the guys that have got that mental edge. It's almost like borderline psychopaths, to be honest.
Like OCD or something as well.
Anybody looking at me would tell you, like, that guy's off his fucking head. I can't accept that.
Yeah.
I had an interesting conversation with one of my best pals about 6 months ago. And we're talking about some of the things we used to do when we were younger and all that. And we're talking about things, about stories when we were drinking and all that. It's just some of this. I've got so many stories of wild things I've done in that life, right? And we're talking about one of the things I'd done one year, and I said to him, "Oh, those were the days, man. I used to be so wild." And he said to me, "Josh, you still are wild. You just rode your bike for 31 hours. just remember, you're still wild, but you just deploy it towards something different now." And I thought, do you know what? That's fucking spot on. It is. Like, it's going out and riding your bike for 31 hours without stopping, basically, is the equivalent of going out on a Thursday night and not coming home till Sunday.
Yep. Yeah. It's not
Same thing.
it's not like normal behaviour.
No.
No. It's not like I just get up and go to work and then come back. That's not like normal. Yeah, you're right. You're right. And you know, you're right in what you say. Like all the kind of major champions or people who excel in their sport are very much like that. You look at someone like Cristiano Ronaldo, obsessive. Did you watch the?
Tiger Woods.
No, I was going to talk about Michael Jordan, the documentary.
The Last Dance.
Yeah, like him, just so focused, you know. And I think people kind of get distracted by everyday life, and I think it takes a certain type of person to just really move all that noise out the road and stay completely hyper focused. And I definitely think sitting on a bike for 31 hours, yeah, I think that's what you're like, guy. So tell me, what's the next big thing for you?
So basically, my big dream goal plan is to win the Tour de France and be the first Scottish winner. That's my absolute goal. That's what I've been talking about for the last couple of years. It's a big, crazy, mental, audacious goal, but it's what I believe I can do. At this moment in time, I'm not really able to do anything towards that because COVID has really just disrupted that space so much where there's no races, there's no competition, there's nothing I can get involved with. So basically what I'm doing at the moment is I'm just finding challenges that I can do on my own within the UK to keep me ticking over, trying to set Scottish records, British records, world records. So basically my year at the moment, my cycling is all focused on record attempts. And I've got another big one coming up at the end of April. Between the 26th of April and the 2nd of May, I'm going to be doing a Guinness World Record attempt for the most amount of miles cycled in 7 days. So,
what is the record just now?
2,177.
What? So where are you starting from and where are you finishing?
So that's, just to put that in perspective, it's 311 miles per day for a week, every day.
Mate, that's not normal behaviour, man. Do you know what? I've got a bike, right? And I do like 10, 15 miles a day, right? And I was like to our pals, I'm feeling good, man. That's me up 15 mile a day, no bother. That is 311 mile a day. So where are you starting from? And where are you?
So my target is to cycle 320 miles per day. If I do that over 7 days, I'll break the record. The current record is held by a professional cyclist from Australia called Jack Thompson. He done it in Spain last year. So we've found a route up in Aberdeen, which starts just in the outskirts of Aberdeen, goes out towards Balmoral Castle. It's relatively flat, which is what you need. That course is 40 miles out, 40 miles back. So me doing an out and back of that 80 miles 4 times a day gets me my 320. That's the plan. So we're going up to Aberdeen to do it on the 26th of April.
Are you going to be having the support vehicle with you and stuff like that as well? Aye.
This will be fully supported as well. Like I'll be on the bike 16 to 18 hours a day, just hitting my 320 miles. Everything else will be looked after. I'm going to have nutritionist, physio, sports masseuse, coaches, motorhome, 2 or 3 vehicles. You know, everything looked after. So that's the next goal.
That is incredible. So how long would that take? Like 320 miles. Roughly how long would that take you to cycle?
About 16 hours a day at a minimum. maybe up to 18.
Wow. That
Every day for 7
every day. See, that's insane, man. That is insane. So it's the mindset I'm really curious about, because I would imagine like most people after 2 or 3 days would be like, oh, do you know what? Fuck this. You know? I just that getting into that headspace where that is the only thing you're focused on. I just think that's fascinating. It really is. And it must be, like we were saying beforehand, that going for a short period of time with that much focus on the one thing, and then having to come back to everyday life, and you're just like paying bills and hoover in the living room and all that, it kind of loses its importance slightly, I would imagine.
I think a lot of my motivation for some of this stuff is, you know, for my mindset going up to Aberdeen in a few weeks is, these are going to be the 7 worst days of my life. I'm going to just suffer. I'm going to suffer like I've never suffered before for 7 days, right? But then, do you know what? See, for the rest of my life, I'm going to be in the Guinness Book of World Records. I'm going to be the champ. I'm going to be the world record breaker. I'm going to be able to sign copies of this book for Christmas. Like, you know, 7 days of suffering for. Do you want to know the one thing? One of the biggest memories I have for the North Coast 500 record,
right,
is getting the train back to Inverness the following day. The train got into Waverley. I got the train from Waverley back to Livingston North, which is where I'm staying, right? See that walk home to Livingston North, to my house. I've done that hundreds, if not thousands of times over the years. But see, doing it that time is the world record breaker. I swear to God, mate, you should have seen me in Morrison's that day. I was like fucking McGregor. I was swaggering about like Conor McGregor. That's what it's all about, mate. It's like, these are things, these are opportunities, and these are chances to do things that 99% of people will never get to experience. And I feel very lucky and privileged to do that. You know, it's not everybody gets to become a world record breaking athlete. And the fact that I've actually got the talent, or the whatever you want to say, whatever it is that I've got something that's clearly physically and mentally capable of setting these sort of records and doing these sort of challenges. So I feel like that's what I'm on this planet to do. That's what I was born to do, because not everybody can do it. And see, if I've got that gift, then I'm going to make the most of it. And suffering for those 7 days is totally worth everything that comes after it.
But listen, that's it's one hell of a way of looking at it, mate. I just imagine you in Morrison's and somebody says something. Who, me? World record holder? Aye. So tell me, see if when everything does open back up and we get to some form of normality, if you were going to, what's the process of getting into the Tour de France and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the process is essentially to start racing, start learning that discipline, because it is a total different discipline on its own to anything I've done before. Start racing, start getting results, start winning, start making a name for myself, get signed by an amateur team, get signed by a professional team, work my way up onto one of the biggest teams, get onto one of the teams that's on the world tour and is doing the biggest races, is doing the Tour de France, ride my first Tour de France. That's it. It's just a process I need to go through.
How long would that process likely take?
I believe I'm going to do it in 2026, which is 5 years from now.
Mate, I love that chat, man. See somebody's just like, nah, it's getting done. I love that. Do you know what it is? Because I speak to a lot of people, and everyone we usually got on the podcast excels at one thing. And I love when I hear somebody who is so forthright in their belief in themselves, because there are, like you said, 99% of the population doubt themselves and they might well be capable of doing something, but that wee doubt in the back of their head stops them from doing it. So when you are going 2026, I'm going to fucking have a go at the Tour de France. I love that chat. It's amazing.
What have I got to lose?
Absolutely nothing. But it's the fear of failure, though. People have got that fear of failure. People go, nah, well, and I think that the fear of failure stops people from even trying. Do you know what I mean?
And I think it's interesting as well. We're mentioning Conor McGregor there and just kind of having a wee joke about it. But Conor McGregor is probably my biggest sporting hero. Somebody that's I've taken so much inspiration from. Conor McGregor is probably the biggest. He's definitely the biggest combat sports fighting personality in the world.
Yeah,
and one of the best. And if you look at Conor McGregor, where he was, 5-10 years ago, or let's say 10 years ago, he was just a guy like me on the way up, telling people what he was going to do. Nobody really believed him. Nobody really thought he was credible. And then look at him now. And where did that come from? It came from that intention. He told people what he was going to do. He visualized it. He put in the work. He never gave up. And surprise, surprise, he got to where he got to.
Talking about visualization, do you do visualization and meditation and stuff like that?
I do intense visualizations. Like
is that intense visualization? See, I've never heard anyone describe it as that. So what is the difference between visualization and intense visualization?
I think it's just like thinking about something like 1,000 times a day.
Really?
It's not like I go and sit in a room and I sit down and I go, right, I'm going to shut my eyes, I'm going to do a visualization. It's just like it's just in my head 24/7. I'm just thinking about it all the time. I'm obsessed by it. Like I'm just constantly visualizing my future. Something that some people will say to me, right, is like some people within cycling will say, Josh, you know what, you're delusional. Like you're never going to do that. And see, what I realized recently, they actually are right in a way. I am delusional because what that means, delusional, is I'm living in a world that doesn't actually exist yet. See, when I'm out on the bike now, I actually view myself as the first Scottish winner of the Tour de France. I feel like I've already done it in a way. And I feel like that and I talk like that. And that's why I'm so forthright and so have so much conviction for this goal, is that I walk around as if it's already happened. And it's not.
And Morrison's.
That to me is like, I have that certainty of what I'm going to do. And you want to bet against a guy that has so much certainty that he's going to do something. It's a risky bet to make.
Very much so, man. Very much so. I'm again, like, see the whole meditation, visualization thing. It has become so much more prominent in everybody else, in everybody's life now. Like, I mean, see the amount of people I know that are doing are meditating, visualization, even the Wim Hof breathing thing. Whereas, like, fucking 5-10 years ago, nobody had ever heard of this. And I do. I admire your resolve, man, because I think a lesser man would have just capitulated, especially after getting hit by a motor at 70 mile an hour. That might have put the kibosh on it for me, to be honest with you. So, apart from the most miles cycled in 7 days, have you got in the Tour de France? Is there anything else in the UK that you're wanting to have a bash at?
I've got a few other things for this year, depending how the year goes. I really would like to set the record for Land's End to Johnny Groats. That's one of my big goals for the year. I'd like to also do the record for Gretna Green to Johnny Groats, which is basically Scotland end to end, and also the North Coast 500 again. That would be my perfect year. If there's not going to be really much racing going on, my perfect year would be those 4 records.
That's good, man. That's really good. And I think I've other cyclists, sort of like the ones who are maybe more well known, have you heard? Have any of them said anything to you? Has anyone ever kind of slipped into your DMs with any chat? No.
Nah, I think to a lot of elements within the cycling community, I'm a bit what's the word for it? A bit an outlier. I think there's a bit infamous is probably the word to some of the cycling community, because I think a lot of these guys just think I'm full of shit. Which is fair enough, I'm the new guy on the scene. I just came out of nowhere and told everyone I'm going to win the Tour de France. And I think to be honest as well, I think there's got to be a bit of jealousy in there as well. Like, I've done something which 99% of cyclists have never been able to do, which is to become a full-time professional, to make a living from the sport of cycling. That's what I've been able to do. And so, A lot of people probably don't like that as well.
And also these people have been training for it their entire lives.
Aye.
You just one day decided you were going to cycle around the world, and look what happened. Do you know what I mean? It's incredible, Josh. Right, okay. Well, thanks very much for coming to talk to me, man. And
My pleasure.
I have absolutely no doubt that when you come on next, that you'll be like, I've got about 6 world records now, Greg, and I'm getting recognised in Sainsbury's now. But anyway, I'm just going to sign off just now. But thanks for listening, folks. Please hit those like and subscribe buttons.